Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Just wanted to do a really brief processing video. Now, if you watched my last one, I sort of focused on my workflow when it comes to emission nebula. I did the horse head. And if you remember, I used a certain plugin called the Gradient Exterminator. And that's a great plugin. I use it a lot to remove sort of gradient in the sky and some other minor imperfections, but I wanted to feature another one that I use quite often, especially lately when it comes to galaxies, and that is this one here called the AstroFlat Pro. Now, I'm, like many, a little bit lazy. I oftentimes don't shoot flats. In fact, I almost never do, and that does cause some issues with processing, and a lot of it has to do with sort of the background consistency and dust spots, gradients, stuff like that. So when you don't shoot flats, it can be really tricky to process your images. But I found this plugin or extension, whatever you want to call it, is really good. And I wanted to just show a few examples of ways that you can use it using a few different targets as examples. So we'll take a look at a couple galaxy images and how it works for that, and then an emission nebula as well. And you can see the effects that it has. You can see it's reasonably priced, $35 US. And that's a one-time fee, and you're able to use it as a full-on extension in Photoshop, and of course use as many times as you like. So reasonably priced, cheaper than Gradient Exterminator, and I think you're gonna find it's very effective. So let's just shoot on over to Photoshop, and we'll start with my pinwheel galaxy. Now I've already edited. I've done my main stretch and levels adjustments. And I've sort of masked off the galaxy itself and done some editing to it. But I haven't touched the background at all. And you see these lines here. Now this is a very cropped image. In fact, this was shot with just 335 millimeters of focal length. And of course from my usual Bortle 9 skies. So when you crop this much, this is, generally what you tend to get. These terrible lines that are hard to remove. I'm sure you've seen them before if you're shooting under similar circumstances, and they can be a real pain to try to get rid of. Oftentimes the easiest way is just to sort of turn the contrast all the way up, but that affects the rest of the image. And then if you try to mask this off first and then adjust the contrast, well, then you don't get consistency throughout the whole picture. So definitely not the best way to do it. Well, here's where AstroFlat Pro comes into the picture, and it does a really good job, because when it analyzes the picture, it's able to adjust the background without affecting the galaxy or the target, you could say, itself. And it all makes it look very consistent, and that's why I really like to do it. So as I mentioned, I've already done my stretches here. I've sort of lassoed off the galaxy and done just some minor editing to that, just to sort of bring it out a little bit. And now I want to show you how this AstroFlat works. So once you install it and it's part of your Photoshop, you just go to Filter, sort of the same as Gradient Exterminator, but instead we're going to use this one here, Pro Digital Software, and just click on AstroFlat Pro. And what it'll do is it'll bring up the image, and it already sort of processed it, and it's showing you a preview. Now you can make adjustments yourself here, but usually I find it's pretty good on its own, especially when it comes to Galaxy. So here we'll just leave it as is and just see how that is. And there it is. You can see what a difference already. And then of course you can still increase the contrast a little. We can go to Image, Adjustments, Brightness, Contrast, and then we can just bring that contrast over just a little bit more if we want, just to give it more of a consistent background. But you can see it does a really nice job, and what I like about it is that it didn't really affect the galaxy itself. It recognizes that and sort of makes adjustments around it without affecting the target. Because if you were to, add a ton of contrast or some of the adjustments it makes to the galaxy itself, you generally tend to lose a lot of this data here, and it'll tend to fade. But in this case, you can see the galaxy looks just about exactly the way it was before, but the background is much better. So in this case especially, I find it really effective. And that's when I definitely use it most. Now I want to demonstrate another way that you can use it. In fact, sort of instead of gradient exterminator. So generally I'll try both. I do use gradient exterminator as well, because it is a little bit less aggressive, but in a case like this, you really do need something that's a little bit more aggressive than just gradient exterminator. But let's take a look at Andromeda here. Just cancel that. And we'll click on Andromeda. Okay, so this is old data, so don't judge me on it. But here's a good example of gradient in your background. You can see where the noise pollution was, this lower part. And here's more what you should look like, or at least what you want it to look like. Also, a couple of things to notice. Here's some dust spots. That's something that's quite common, especially if you've been using your camera for some time. So you could use gradient exterminator here, and it usually does a good job, but sometimes you still get patchy parts of the sky. Particularly with this object, you'll get maybe a little bit darker around the galaxy, and then the rest is lighter, even though it's more consistent. But let's try this AstroFlat and see what happens. So again, we go to Filter, Pro Digital Software, AstroFlat Pro. And it's mapping luminance levels, and there you go. You see the difference already. Now it might be a little bit too much for you, and you can of course make adjustments if you want. You see? And just sort of do it the way you like. You want to make sure that it's not taking away that color from the galaxy itself. I think that looks good. And maybe just go a little bit more. Just do some testing. You see when you bring this down, you see it already comes back. So we're going to leave that up where it was at 97. And the smoothness, yeah, we don't want to take away that. So we're going to leave that up as well. So we'll hit OK. It makes the changes. Sometimes it can take a little while. There it is. So you can see those dust spots are gone. You still see the little galaxy here. And the galaxy itself is mostly unchanged. Now you can still go in and do a few more curves adjustments if you want. And then you may need to make, minor adjustments to the... But you notice even when you do a curve, you see the background staying pretty consistent. So that's what you want. It's not going back to that sort of gradient that was there before. So you can make those adjustments and you still get that consistent background. And that's why I really like this tool, this plugin. It just makes it so much easier to remove a lot of those defects, and then you can still sort of increase your contrast as you like and get some of that darker sky color back. And then of course from here I would sort of lasso the galaxy itself and then make adjustments to it. So there's two examples of galaxies. One is just trying to get the background more even, remove those sort of vertical or sometimes even horizontal lines that we often get when we're cropping like that. And another example here with Andromeda, and trying to remove sort of that sky gradient and those dust spots. You can see a little bit here. I think I could have adjusted a little bit more, but overall it's still a lot better, and I can just make adjustments with the contrast and that'll fix that. So it does quite a good job, but again, it's not to replace gradient exterminator. I still use gradient exterminator, but just showing you that you can use AstroFlat as well, and it does a pretty good job. So let's flip over and do an emission nebula. So here we go. Here is the Sol Nebula. This is another older pic that I took quite a few months back. And I've done, as with the other ones, the usual, I've done some stretching of the image, some curves adjustment, and of course adjusting the levels as well. And here we go again. We got some weird sort of purple color. We have quite a bit of sky gradient, dark spots here at the bottom. There's quite a few things that we need to fix in this picture, and here's another little bit of dust spot as well. So let's see what happens when we use it in this case to try and remove a lot of those. So again, we'll go to Filter, Pro Digital Software, AstroFlat Pro. Let's see what happens. Pretty good. Not perfect. There's a little bit still of a, discoloration at the bottom, but we see the dust spots gone. It's a lot better already. And let's just see, maybe we can fix that a little bit. We want to be careful that we're not, clipping the data of the actual nebula, but so far that's pretty good. So that's already a lot better. I think that's pretty good. So let's hit OK. And you'll see a difference here now, going from what it was. Here's another dust spot here to that. So that's pretty good. You know, it got rid of a lot of those imperfections. You can see a little bit still here of the discoloration, but not bad. Again, you can go in, adjust your contrast, and you can even do more curve adjustments, and you're not going to get that crazy grading that was there before. And from here, of course, I would go and lasso off the nebula itself, and then make my, as we saw in the other video, my camera raw filter adjustment. So just a quick video, guys. Those are 3 ways that you can use it. You can see it's quite effective in all of them. But definitely it's been a big saver for these galaxies, especially this time of year when you're shooting. You know, if you're anything like me, using a small refractor trying to take pictures of galaxies and you're cropping this much, that unevenness, that flats are supposed to help. If you're not taking flats, well, then this can be a real lifesaver, this extension. It's not perfect, but we can make adjustments. And what I'll often do as well when it comes to these galaxies is when I do my final adjustments, as I mentioned in my first video in Photoshop Express, I'll adjust the color and luminance levels, and that sort of helps to smooth out this background even more. So if I can at least get it this good with this extension, then once I go into Photoshop Express, I'm able to improve it even more by adjusting I think it's called reduce color luminance and reduce luminance sliders. And that will just totally soften out the rest of what's left of these faint marks here, and just make it a nice even background. And that's what you want without affecting the stars too much. So yeah, a quick video. I definitely recommend it. You know, it comes at a reasonable price, and it's good to have in addition to sky grading, the gradient exterminator. You can sort of work with both, see what works better. Sometimes one will work better with an image. Sometimes I even use both. I'll use the gradient exterminator first, and then I go to the AstroFlat Pro and just sort of play around and experiment with that. But it can make a huge difference on your images and just sort of getting a nice clean background that we're always looking for, and saving you from having to take flats sometimes, because sometimes, let's be honest, we're tired, we're lazy, we just don't feel like taking them. So this enables you to sort of get away with that and still produce really quality images. So thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.